went on with my life, and like a week or two later I was like, but wait, if I made that much money on it, maybe there's even more to do. The higher prices go for me, the more kind of like disgusted I get by the space. Like if it starts closing below 14k, I would have been like that. I think if you have very little money, you should stay away from.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Burrow with arguably the main character of CT at the moment. Well, not after he's sold, but the one and only DonAlt. It's good to have you on.
Me, the main character? Never heard that.
Honestly, recently, yeah, I think you might actually have that status. Well, Capo in first place.
I'll leave it to him then. No, I mean it's good that I sold then, because the main character always dies, and I'd rather not be that.
Yeah, it's a curse. And of course, we've also got Mr. Jim Talbot, the cat, as usual. Thank you as well, Jim, for coming on.
Pleasure. Hello, guys.
All right.
I'm like side-eyeing the chart at the same time today.
Yeah,
so
I mean, honestly,
apologize.
For the people who are obviously not aware what time we're recording this, Bitcoin is, well, it's testing resistance at the moment. It's definitely not a great time to be recording if you want to trade this. So, Don, have you you've not really been trading much at all since you kind of sold a massive move, to be fair, over the course of a few months.
Yeah, no, I've been on a tradecation is what I call it, because it's been a year of like a lot of trading for me. And then I was just like, okay, it's been enough. The price is high enough. I made enough money. I'm more than happy to just kind of call it a year and then see how it looks next year.
Yeah. Well, especially as you have the kid now as well.
Yes. Yeah. I gotta make sure that I don't like think about charts all day, and that's kind of what it turned into. You know, like it's actually quite bad. Like when you trade too actively, and I'm sure you guys know this. You kind of just never stop thinking about price, even if you're like, no matter what you're doing, basically. Especially when you're in a position, right? Even if it's like a spot position or whatever, it just takes like a corner of your mind. And I was like, okay, I cannot have that for like, I mean, the little one is starting to kind of understand what's going on now. And then I don't want to necessarily be the guy that always thinks about something else while I'm with her. It doesn't seem nice.
Well, she's starting to look at the charts. You're going to get her on early.
I mean, she already likes it, actually. Like when I sit in front of the computer, and sometimes I take her because my fiance is doing something, and then she looks at the charts, she looks at whatever, and enjoys it greatly. She actually loves the screens, which has been a little bit of a fight, because I don't want her to be like when she sees someone is on their phone, she wants to look.
Oh yeah.
But I've been like, nah, we cannot, like this way too early.
Yeah. Well, instead of those sensory videos, have you been showing a technical roundup instead? Just have that on all day.
No. She's going to turn out bad if I do that.
I love it. So do you think like, has that actually influenced the fact that you haven't been trading as much recently? Or do you think you would be not really trading regardless?
No, I think I would be trading probably.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's hard to say. Like right now I would just be short-term trading, because I think this is kind of the market to short-term trade. I usually just kind of do the whole like high time frame stuff, try to get the trend right, and then just trade that direction. But when stuff goes parabolic, and I would say that's kind of what we're doing right now, if you start doing high time frame trades, and I think a lot of people actually are starting to do that now, where they're like, okay, I'm gonna like bet on the trend because the market's going up. But what you get is basically you get completely wiped out on one or two candles to the up or downside, and you're completely fucked. And what you should be doing instead is trading the low time frames, because usually you cannot trade, in my opinion anyway, like that's not what I do. Like trade the low time frames when it's slowly trending or doing whatever. But when it's going parabolic, you can actually like just trade the hourly, trade the 4-hour chart, because it moves enough and it's strong enough that you can just kind of milk it a little bit. So yeah,
I think that's what you're known for, right? At the moment, is these just like very high time frame single big trades. Like, I mean, my favorite was when you did that chart where it was like the risk reward was either Bitcoin going to zero or like back to highs.
Oh,
And
people were so fucking upset at that,
I love
which is
that.
quite funny because I mean, obviously, it's a little bit of a meme chart, you know, like a stop loss at 0 doesn't really make much sense, and it's not like I would have ever been like sitting in front of like that chart and it went to 5K, and I'm like, my stop loss not been hit. Like, obviously, that was a little bit of a meme chart. It was just basically to kind of make it obvious that it's a spot trade, right? Like, as in, like you buy it and you just like it. At this point, it's low enough. That's kind of what I did in that, and worked out quite well.
What would have been your actual invalidation on a trade like that?
My actual invalidation was actually quite close. Like I was like if it starts closing below 14K, I would have been like, that. That's bad. Like the market was already so bad at that point, and my whole thesis was basically like, the market didn't vanish when FTX went insolvent, right? Like that's basically the worst thing that you could get. And then the market didn't move at some point, right? Like we got the initial news, and then it spiked low, and then it just consolidated around 16K, and we got so much bad news, so much kind of like shit thrown at the entire space. And I was like, okay, there's a reason why it's not moving down, and that's because, like, I mean, there's no one left to sell, basically. Like the FTX guys sold the funds of their users. That was a large chunk of the move down. And then you also had just everyone that had a little bit of a brain be like, well, fuck this. This entire industry is collapsing, right? So everyone kind of sold. There was no one left to sell. And only kind of like the hardened people were like, fuck it. I'm just going to buy it and see how it goes. So that was my thesis at that point. So like the zero stop loss is not really what I would have done. But if that would have been invalidated, as in like kind of you make new lows, you kind of start trending lower, I would have been like, fuck this.
Well, I think it was quite good. It was like the way I saw it was basically a depiction of why it's just a pretty simple decision to long that low down, because even if you're wrong, like, I mean, the upside is pretty massive and the downside is, you know, you're already at what, like 15K. So I think, that's at least how I perceived it.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it is too. Like whenever crypto crashes massively, like not just like 10, 20%, but like these 60, 70, 80% moves to the downside. If you're a crypto native, like when the fuck are you going to buy? You know, like at some point you're just going to have to be like, okay, this is so bad, but it's down so much. Fuck it. Let's go. And if you're already watching the market basically 24/7, and let's be real, that's kind of what we all do anyway, might as well have a point where you're like, okay, fuck it, it's slow enough. And if it goes lower, I'll just buy more. And if it goes to 0, I mean, at the end of the day, this space has kind of like, at least to a lot of us, made us so much money that even if it goes to 0 at the end, I mean, you're going to come out positive if you don't like completely ape it. And then you're like, just fuck it. Roll it. And it usually goes well. Like whenever I think like that, whenever I'm like, fuck all of this is so dumb, and then just do that. Obviously, I don't put all my net worth in. I don't risk kind of my lifestyle, but close enough. And then you're like, fuck it.
What's your lifestyle? You like first class, private jets?
No, I'm very frugal anyway. Like I don't do any of that. I don't really care too much. It's especially now with having a child. Like I wouldn't want to raise anyone like that. I think you kind of get to be a shitty person. Like imagine like a 5-year-old flying around in first class all the time. Like it's just, or like private jet even. I don't think that leads to a healthy lifestyle later down the road. So I wouldn't want to have that anyway. And the lifestyle is basically just like if you 100% net worth all in, and then you cannot afford rent, because I mean, I never finished my studies. I never like properly went to work. I basically went to university, had very little money. I was like, this crypto thing seems quite fun. I originally, I mean, the backstory of that, if you want to go into that, and where I kind of got to know crypto was that my brother was in IT, and he came to me one day and he was like, hey, there's this internet money thing. It's called Bitcoin. You can buy one for $1 right now. It's quite cool. Let's buy a bunch. And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, whatever. It's $1. Cannot be that bad. and we tried to buy but couldn't really figure out how to. We're not really motivated to do a bunch of research, and then we found a way, which was basically just with credit card. And we were pretty young back then, and so we had to go to my mom and ask her, like, hey, could we use your credit card? We're gonna give you the money for it. And she said no.
Yeah, of course.
She was like, no.
Yeah.
And then we were like, both of us, like, I was like, okay, fuck it. I mean, it just didn't work. Whatever. It's a meme anyway. And I moved on with my life. And my brother was like, okay, no, I want to have it. So he mined a little bit.
Yeah, it's happened to me as well. Yeah.
And then price went up to 1,000 USD. And I looked at it and was like, fuck my life. And then I was like, I want to buy it at some point. Like, if it can go from 1 to 1,000, it's probably gonna go higher. Eventually, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. But that was kind of my thought process. And then Bitcoin went through like a bad bear market. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy it.
What year was that roughly?
I think it was like, I bought Dogecoin instead of Bitcoin. I think it was 2014, 2015. Because I was like, okay, Bitcoin sounds fun, but I mean, Dogecoin, like, if you can bet on memes, you might as well bet on memes.
Oh, you're way ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah. And so
everyone else was trying to high IQ it.
What was the sort of narrative and thought? What were people talking about Doge back in the day then? What was the sort of...
I mean, the only thing I literally, like, I saw the Bitcoin logo and I saw the Dogecoin logo, and I think it was 2014 or 15, people were doing this whole, like, I don't know if that was like a year prior, year after, but anyway, like, the big thing was like that they were sponsoring like a bobsledding team. I don't know if you guys remember this.
No, this is before I was really...
Same, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. So they basically, they did a bunch of shit. They sponsored a NASCAR race car because they were like, yeah, we're just like going.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, and before that, they sponsored like a bobsledding thing. Basically, just the community just pooling a bunch of money together, put a Doge logo, and it was like they sponsored like an African team into bobsledding, and then like was made media all over the world because they couldn't even train or something. I don't quite remember it right, but it was very funny.
Maybe it was like a Cool Runnings part two. I don't know if Jim knows that film.
Sounds like Cool Runnings.
Yeah, it's a British classic.
Yeah, it was really, really funny. And that was kind of the vibe. I don't know if that was after I bought or before. But that was the vibe, basically. Like, the community was just kind of like, fuck it. So I was like, this is quite cool. I didn't really put much money in it. Like, I was a student at the time. It was very, like, as poor as you could be in Germany. Grew up with, like, a single mom. So I was not like I had any money. We were always struggling. I think I threw like $50 or $100 into Dogecoin, and then price went down for like a little bit, and I didn't really check on it. I was like, yeah, this is like, this crypto thing seems kind of like infant still, like very infant stages. So I'm just gonna leave it. Worst case, I just lose that money. And then one day I came back from a vacation actually, and I checked, and I was up like, I don't know, like 10-15x on my Doge, and I was like, holy shit. this is quite like, this is quite crazy. I didn't think I would make any money on this. I sold it, and basically went on with my life. And like a week or two later, I was like, but wait, if I made that much money on it, maybe there's even more to do. And the rest
is that when you started
basically
getting a bit more active, like trading instead of just buying?
Yeah. And then at that point, I was like, okay, let me see if I can trade this. Let me see if I can make some money on this, and put in a little bit more money that I had saved up during the time I was holding Doge. So I put all of that Doge money back in and put like 500 or something on top of that, and then just started trading, and went pretty well. And then had the fortune, like, I was very fortunate that I was basically like getting more and more active into 2017.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I had done like a little bit before, but I was getting more and more active into like what I would consider one of the bigger crypto bubbles. Like 2017 was just completely crazy. Like you could be the biggest idiot and you would still hit it, right? Like the I mean, yeah, the last bubbles that we've had, like the DeFi bubble and all of that, you would have to at least like somewhat get the sector right, or have like anything, like you would have to do a little bit more thinking. Back then you could just literally buy any crypto and you made money. So I was pretty lucky there, and then it just from there was up only and went pretty well.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, like, because I think I went through a pretty typical phase of when you're starting to get more interested in the market, and you try and, you know, it's that classic the normal distribution of IQ meme where the mid curvers are overthinking it. And I was like, oh, what's got the best tech and all these sort of things. I love that you were like, oh, meme coins, that sounds like it's got the best, chance of doing well, and which obviously turned out to be, pretty accurate in terms of what caught on with retail at least.
Yeah, I think it's not taking it too serious in crypto in general does pretty well, especially when you start out. Like once you're a little bit further in your career, or whatever you want to call it, I think at some point you kind of have to let go of the meme mindset. Like you can still play in it, but if you have all of your money in memes after like 2 or 3 cycles, I think that's just asking for it basically. But especially when you start out, that's a good place to look, just because I mean, at the end of the day, if you lose everything that you put in, it's not going to be that much. And the returns that you can get are quite outsized, I would say. And you don't know what you're doing anyway, right? Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, if someone gets into crypto, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So if you're trying to kind of like be sophisticated, good chance that you just do something dumb and lose. So might as well just do something dumb from the get-go, get into the memes, and then be like, whatever. I think that's kind of how I started. Obviously not financial advice. I don't want to put anyone into.
That's the
but the whole thing in crypto is that you have to go through some shit and then you learn.
Yeah, of course.
Might as well just.
I think it's the same now. I think the real good gains are like on people that are willing to grind the on-chain listings and stuff like this. It's beyond me personally. As far as like, I haven't got the like, I just can't. It's too like mentally draining for me personally. But I see the younger people that are grinding it and doing well, and that's cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm just kind of like, I look at this and I get disgusted more than anything nowadays.
Yeah, you guys are boomers.
Like, I'm just like, this is just.
You're both just boomers. I think that's the issue. You don't get it. I'm massively long bonk right now.
So I've got some questions just to go back to sort of your swing thesis and everything. I just got some questions with regards to like, how do you manage a position? That's a year-long position. There's not many people that are as good at managing long-term positions as you in the space, I don't think. So I'm just wondering, like, any tips you would give to people on how to not over-manage and how to sort of manage your expectations and your emotions, especially during those really long consolidations.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like, I do overmanage myself, I would say. Like, I'm still not at the point, like, I could have just held my position. I traded in and out of it a couple times. And at the end of the day, we're trading at 42,000 something now. And I exited at 38K, and my target was technically higher than that, right? So I still do like a little bit of overmanaging and kind of like doing all that, because for me, it's hard to hold stuff for too long. Like it goes against everything in me, because I'm like, basically I entered a position where a lot of people are like fearful and they're like, fuck this, I don't want to have anything to do with this. It's kind of my preferred trading style. I just buy when it's like completely terrible. But the higher prices go for me, the more kind of like disgusted I get by the space. Like I look on Twitter, I look at everything, and I'm like, fuck this. Like these people, this entire attitude, I hate it. And then I want to sell, and it gets worse and worse the higher it goes. And so it's kind of like a daily struggle for me. But what I tend to do is just kind of like, I look at the other side and I'm like, would I actually want to be shorting this? Like if I'm in a long, I'm like, would I actually want to be shorting this? And more often than not, the answer is no. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to hold on for a little bit longer. and then the next consolidation hits. I'm like, okay, I mean, let's see how this goes. Usually when you have consolidations in crypto, even if you go down afterwards, you have a spike upwards, right? So I kind of just tend to search for those spikes, and then kind of it's easy, for example, like to use like a recent example with if I was still trading at 38K, right? So we had that breakout at 38K. And what I look for is basically that was a massive consolidation, and it's quite an important kind of time right now with going into the ETF. So if we would have lost that breakout, I would have been bearish, right? So what I do to kind of hold on to my positions is like, okay, I can just move my stop loss higher, because now it's very obvious that if we go below 38K, I can get out. Or I should be getting out, because that's quite bearish. We should have more momentum than that, basically. And then I just keep raising my invalidation to kind of just secure whatever I have. But also, you kind of have to. It's a very, very fine balance, because what I see a lot of people do is they kind of just like price goes up, it consolidates, and they just put their new invalidation below that consolidation, and that obviously, like, more often than not, you're gonna get a run on something, or like price dips, so does the usual stuff, and then you get out, and you're out of a swing term, like a swing play that you wanted to play for a year, and that's kind of shitty. So what you have to do is you have to have a little bit of space. During these rallies, what I tend to do is basically, like, I enter my position, price goes up, and I just don't do anything. You get a new consolidation, and you get a new push up, and then I'm like, okay, I basically raise my stop loss, or whatever you want to call it, where my entry was. So I'm always like, I have one consolidation between me, like my invalidation and price. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, if I could show it on the chart, it'd be easier. But basically, like, I tend to have, like, if you're trading in the consolidation, my invalidation would be even like one below it. And just giving it a little bit of room. Always depends on the context. It's difficult to describe, because a lot of trading is just context based, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
but as far as, like, you know, when you're managing a position for that length of time, what sort of stops you from overanalyzing, you know, getting stuck in the minutiae of lower time frames and things like what kind of time period are you giving between sort of re-evaluating the position and maybe changing your invalidations and things?
I mean, the easiest answer to that is basically, like, I just don't look at the low time frames. I try to avoid it at, like, if at all possible. So, like, if I have a weekly trade, what you're gonna see me do is just look at the daily, look at the maximum, like the 4-hour chart, and I'm just like, and then I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, this looks quite bad, but then I always go back to kind of where my trade was based on, which is the weekly time frame. And I'm like, yeah, it might look bad on the 4-hour, but you can literally not see this candle on the weekly time frame. So you kind of have to look at it from a very zoomed out perspective, otherwise you cannot hold these.
That's crazy good discipline, in my opinion. I'm like, because it's true, and I think honestly it would save so many people just hearing this. Like, if you're in a weekly swing, and I'm listening as well because I'm shit at this, like, look at weekly candles. Yeah, it's quite simple. It sounds simple, but it's, you know, it's difficult, especially when you've got fluctuating P&L. Are you someone that avoids looking at the fluctuating P&L? Does that help you mentally?
It's not real until it's closed. Like, it doesn't exist. Like, so basically, like, and this is something that I see a lot of people kind of do wrong too, like that are super focused on the P&L thing. Because if you're super focused on the P&L thing, you cannot close that trade and reopen another one. Because then the moment that turns red, you're like, fuck this. But you're technically still in the same trade, right? Like, for example, I bought 16K, I sold 30, and then I rebought like 25 or 26. And I'm still, like, for me, this is still the same trade, but I had a bunch of people in my comments being like, why the fuck would you close that trade? Your entry is so good. And I'm like, my entry literally didn't change. Like, nothing changed. It's the same position. I just had, like, I mean, you could technically just keep the same position hedge on another exchange or whatever, if that helps your kind of like P&L focusedness. But this is something that I see a lot of people do. They're basically like, okay, your P&L, like they basically have to have the position from the debt bottom.
Yeah,
and
they want that maximum percentage on the card.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. Yeah. And in general, like all of that, like the unrealized P&L, it's just it doesn't exist. It's basically how I'll calculate it is if I want to, which I rarely do, but if I do calculate it, is my new invalidation, right? So whenever I raise my invalidation, like that's the take profit that I have. But even then, like you sometimes slip, you do a bunch of shit, you just ignore the green or red number unless it's near or at your invalidation, in my opinion.
I'm quite curious.
At your target, obviously.
Like for your style of trading, because like the guests we've had previously are definitely like, you know, higher frequency than you would be in terms of these like weekly swings. Do you actually like find yourself like journaling and, you know, really analyzing a setup, or are you kind of just like, because I kind of get this perception, you look at the chart and you're like, yeah, like so it seems about right along here, and then you ride that for a few weeks. I'm curious how much thought is actually going into each one of your trades.
Yeah, so back in the day, back when I started out, I'd be like journaling. I would write down everything, write down my feelings when I was in the trade, all that kind of stuff, just to make sure that I kind of like just when I remember back or when I look back, that I can just kind of look how I felt, what the setup was, all of that kind of stuff. Nowadays, I don't do any of it. You know, I just look at the chart. I look at the chart, I look at sentiment, I look at kind of the entire news flow that you have. I look a little bit at positioning, but less so because that can change quite quickly, right? Like, I think it's an incredible edge to have, like when you have a good understanding of how people are positioned in the market. But in general, like the positioning of the market changes quite rapidly. So
how do you gauge that? Do you look at like Twitter or? For sentiment,
the positioning, I mean, you or sentiment. Like sentiment, I look at Twitter. That's that's very nice to have. Like if you have a big kind of a big Twitter account, I can just sometimes I put a tweet out replies. That I don't actually, and I don't actually 100% mean what I say. I just want to see like how the lay of the land is basically, and that gives me quite a bit of information, because what a lot of people do with this kind of sentiment stuff, and this is why it has such a bad reputation, is they follow a bunch of good traders, right? They go on Twitter, they follow a bunch of good traders, because, I mean, why the fuck would you be following a shit trader? And then they're like, okay, what's the sentiment amongst these people? And they try to counter trade it, right? Like, that's the dumbest thing that you could ever do. Like, either your perception of what a good trader is completely wrong, and you're following the wrong people on Twitter, or you should be kind of like roughly in line whatever the fuck the people that you follow are saying, you know? So I think that's why sentiment trading has such a bad reputation. But with kind of like my reach, I just need to put out a tweet and then I have a bunch of reply guys.
I love the idea of your followers, your devout followers watching this and finding out that they are the counter indicator. Every time they're liking your tweets and replying, you are just taking data on what direction it's going to go in.
Yeah, but it's not the biggest part, obviously. There's a lot of things that kind of go into kind of just the feel of the market. You know, you can kind of tell if it's depressed, if it's a little bit hyped, if it's like sleeping. For example, I would say like when we're trading at 30K, the market was still very sleepy in a way. You know, like there's barely any new activity. Everyone that has been in the market has been trading, but there wasn't really that much new people coming in and new chatter, all of that kind of stuff. And you can tell, I think, like if you've been around a while, you can tell. And what I would say now with like where we're trading at 42, 43, that has changed quite a bit. Like now there's actually a spotlight on the market. People are actually interested again. You will see this if you just look at Reddit trends, like the whole subreddits, the crypto subreddits are starting to pop off again, all of that kind of stuff. So you have a little bit more activity there, and that doesn't have to be bearish, right? Like I think in general, like during these parabolic stages of the market, you make a bunch of money, you lose a bunch of money, basically. Like this is where you make the most and lose the most, and you just have to time it really well. That's why I said at the beginning that this is low time frame stuff now. I'm not that good at it. So I generally tend to try to avoid it. But
yeah.
So that's like the sentiment side of things. And obviously you can look at positioning, funding, all of that kind of stuff. But I don't actually have to do that too much, given, like I said, if you're trading on the weekly time frame, the whole positioning and funding and everything can change so quickly. Like a month of time is nothing on the weekly chart, but is everything in the order books, right? Like that's going to change a lot. So don't have to look at that too much.
Like, do you feel like you've got a privilege with your style of trading due to like the size you can actually put up? Or like, because I'm thinking from the perspective of someone who's maybe got, you know, 1K, they're looking to spin up and probably blow up, but, you know, use that to kind of make it, let's say. I think a lot of people kind of turn to this more like a, you know, scalping, getting in and out of trades quickly. Do you think, like, I'm guessing, you know, you went down a similar route, but do you think it's actually possible to start with just big swings, or do you think it's kind of necessary to take lower time frame trades with less capital?
I think you have to be a better trader. Like, obviously you have to have more discipline if you trade the high time frames, but you have to be a better trader if you trade the low time frames. Like you're fighting people that are much smarter than you. In my opinion anyway. This is why I stay away. I'm too dumb for this shit. But basically, like, when you're trading the low time frames, you have a bunch of people that are really good at what they do, and you're kind of trying to take money from them. And when you're trading high time frames, you're just kind of trying to go with the flow, right? And in my opinion, you don't have to be as skilled. You don't have to have as solid of an edge. Like for me, I see a bunch of people kind of looking at the order books, looking at this, that, like these indicators, whatever, and they find edge in it and they use it. And I'm like, cool for you. I'm way too dumb for this shit. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But what I can do is just kind of look at the high time frames, see where the market is generally going, or where I think it's going to go, and then kind of make decisions based on that. It's easier for me. But yeah, to answer that question, like, basically, I think if you have very little money, you should stay away from trading like Bitcoin and ETH, and you should just go down the shitcoin rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Or you take it very seriously and trade like in a kind of like in a style that I would do technically. I think you can do the exact same thing. I mean, the returns are not bad. It's just not as spectacular as you're gonna see on Twitter. But also, like, you're already gonna be kind of trained in the way of trading that style, right? What I see a lot of people do, basically, they hit it and like they get lucky. Let's be real, like I got lucky too at the start. They get lucky, they make a bunch of money, and they can never go back. Like, you make a bunch of quick money, you can never go and actually implement like a proper trading system if you got lucky from the get-go. Like, it's very, very hard, you know, like, because you're used to just having easy money thrown at you, and you're just like, fuck it, I made a bunch of money this way. I actually, like, I'm the smart guy here. And what happens at the end of the day, and this is something I've seen a lot of people go through, is they make a bunch of lucky money and they lose a bunch of money. Whether that is unlucky or not, I don't know. But it's like, habits die hard, you know? Like, if you get into a shitty habit of trading very shittily, and oftentimes during bull market that actually gets rewarded, that will go against you later down the line when the market turns a little bit worse. So there's upsides and downsides to all of this, you know? Like, yes, when you trade higher time frames, you make less money, or you could make less money, but also you'll probably keep more of it at the end of the day. So, yeah.
My take on that really is, I think people try and find the optimum way of doing something to maximize gains, hypothetically, but they're not necessarily finding what's optimum for their mentality and thought process. You know, Don's good at what he does because that's how Don's brain functions, as far as, you know, looking at sentiment, taking big swings, buying when everyone else is selling. That works for him. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Doesn't work for many people in this space, to be honest.
But, yeah, definitely doesn't work.
And again, as far as like the lucky money goes, I think, like, there's no issue with, like, again, it's the introspection after the fact. You know, there's nothing wrong with making lucky money, but having the self-awareness to know that you were lucky in that moment, as opposed to thinking it was based on your just unbelievable brilliance, is important, you know. So
that's very well said. Yeah, I like it. I mean, in general, that's kind of, I see a bunch of people basically make it and unmake it in the space over and over and over again, and it's quite sad to see, especially when it goes in the way where people make a bunch, and then what often happens is that you change your lifestyle, right? Like a lot of people change their lifestyle if they make a bunch of money, and then they cannot kind of recreate that success that they had, and then it just all goes down to shit. So,
I generally struggle to sympathize with people that keep making the same mistakes over and over, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, that's why journaling is so important. You know.
I think it depends very much on kind of how your mental is. You know, like I tend to kind of just generally be very, I go into myself a lot. So like the journaling part, like I don't have to do as much, or I mean, I did it at the start a lot, but nowadays I don't do it as much because I'm going to do it anyway. You know, like I'm going to think about what I did right and wrong. I don't have to write it down because I beat myself up over it anyway. So I might as well keep me from doing it over and over again.
I think that's one of the key distinctions of the people I've spoken to in this space. Like the better traders only really focus on the negatives of themselves, you know. And for me, the people I see blowing up all the time generally are, you know, probably focus too much on their own ego and esteem as opposed to like, what am I shit at? Because I'm the same in the sense I only really focus on the shit bits. I never really dwell on the wins or the positives. I'm like, what could I have improved on? And I think that's really important.
Do you, like, Don, do you feel like, because I just, on the subject of ego, like obviously you're now probably one of the biggest accounts on CT. Like, do you feel like that gave you some sort of confidence booster, or do you feel like that's affected your trades? You know, like kind of the bigger you got, the more people were listening.
I mean, I would say if anything, it's a negative on that front. Like, it doesn't really give me a confidence booster because you're gonna get shit on 24/7 anyway. Like, that's the Twitter experience. Yeah. I do have like a little bit of a style to my tweets that pisses people off, which I mean, that's kind of my humor in general. So I get a lot of shit if I'm wrong. Like if I'm ever wrong, I get a lot of shit. Like for example, I sold 37.5 and people are already tweeting at me. Like I longed 16K, sold 37.5 and people are already like tweeting at me being like,
I need to join in on the dunking.
You sold way too early.
They probably bought their Bitcoin off you.
Yeah, but that's literally how it goes. So like the whole like getting a bigger ego through that, not really.
Okay.
So I don't really have that. If anything, like, and this is for me, and this is something that I struggle with in general, and I think a lot of people have this, is like when you have like a Twitter profile or YouTube or whatever, there's going to be like 10 people that write nice things, and there's going to be one person that just absolutely shits on you. And the only person that you're going to remember is that one person that shit on you. And it's absolutely terrible. It's not how it's supposed to be. But I mean, it's just how it is. So like, if anything, I remember the shit talking, which is, it's not good. And it's something that obviously you shouldn't focus on. And it's very easy to say, but once you actually get that amount of actually quite something. It happens all the time. Like you can have the nicest comments. If one guy hits on you, you're gonna focus on that one. So it doesn't raise my ego, whatever. If anything, it takes it down a notch, which is not necessarily the worst, I think.
Yeah.
Can have too much ego in the space.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting because that was just making me think about, you know, like with Technical Roundup with you and Cred, like the fact that you've been doing this free content for a long time. And like one time I was kind of sitting there, I was like, I wonder what like you guys are doing that for. Like, you know, like if you look at the comments, like you said, like people will just be hating for no reason. Or like, you know, like I'm a lot of people are grateful, obviously. But I'm curious what your driver is for like this content side of things.
I mean, it kind of morphed. So at the start, I was just my entire Twitter profile, right, was started because I saw a bunch of people basically posting stuff on Twitter that they clearly had no clue about. I was like, these people. Like, this cannot, like, I just want to be a reply guy, you know? Like, I was like, I'm going to shit talk people. So this is kind of where my account was born. Like, I saw a bunch of people targeting 150K Bitcoin when we were trading at 20K in 2017, or like close to it. And I was like, this is so dumb. Like, that makes no sense to me. And that's kind of where my Twitter profile came from. So I was just kind of like in that to correct people, which is very shitty motivation. And then I was like, I did that. I basically posted my thoughts underneath other people's tweets, which nowadays I hate. I mean, I was everything I hate nowadays, so I deserve everything I get. But yeah, I posted my thoughts, and I got a bunch of very nice messages afterwards, because I was very bearish back then, like 20K and the altcoin season that was going on. I was like, guys, like, we've all made a shitload of money. Take some home. Make sure that you keep it. Make sure you can pay your taxes, because those are gonna come. And 2017 ended with a bang, and then 2018 was basically straight down, you know. And a bunch of people didn't account for taxes, didn't do all of that. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try to do my best to kind of like help people out, and I got a lot of positivity out of that, and met a lot of people that I liked spending time with. And so I was hanging out, and I was like, okay, this is actually quite cool. And then the more time you spend on something, and trading is kind of my hobby, in a way, like it's my job and it's my hobby, and you want to talk about it, you know. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to talk with people. I might stream it from time to time if there's something interesting to say. And that's how it started, and that's how it went for like a year or two. And then at some point I was like, my entire lifestyle was just going completely nuts. Just like the trader lifestyle, basically. Like you wake up in the middle of the day. You go to bed at 8 in the morning. All of that just based on like how the market is moving. And I was like, I cannot continue this. I'm gonna have to look for a job, because like I need that stability. Like I cannot, like it's too bad. And I every time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try, I just get kind of like taken off course. So I didn't really want to like just start something in the real world, because I was way too lazy for it, and I didn't want to like. I mean, if you work somewhere and you get like whatever $20 an hour after having made like a million times that in the market, you know, like it feels not right either. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to find something that gives me a little bit of stability, and I made that basically doing that content, and that helped me kind of get back into like having a regular schedule of some sort at least. Yeah. And now, because I didn't know if it was Monday, Sunday, Wednesday, whatever. Like I barely knew like what month it was, because like everything just started blending into each other. And then I was like, I have to kind of stabilize all of that somehow. And doing that content helped in that way. And nowadays it's much easier now that I have like a waifu and a child. Like that isn't really a problem anymore. But during like a year or two ago, that was a big part of why I did it.
Yeah, well, with your like, you're not really trading much now. Well, what are you doing with your free time? Like, you probably have loads, right?
Oh yeah, I have. Like, my child is super easy, and my fiance just loves to do everything. Like, she loves to clean, she loves to cook, she loves to do all of that kind of stuff, and she actually insists on doing it too. So it's not like there's much for me to do on that front. And the little one is quite easy. She doesn't cry, she doesn't do anything.
Well, you're living a hard life over there, Don. It's tough.
Yeah, I just hang out. Basically, I hang out. I've been playing Elden Ring in the last week. That's been fun. But yeah, that's basically like it's just doing the like hanging out with the little one. I also bought like a new house.
No castle
last month. No castle. No, the castle.
It's funny. It's funny because at the start,
if you'd held till 42K,
yeah, you could have gone one
castle.
It was funny because at the start you were like, I don't want my daughter to grow up with like a frivolous life, and then meanwhile you were looking to buy castles.
No, I mean
playing Elden Ring.
No, I mean the castle. I think people are kind of like, I mean, people are thinking about like Neuschwanstein or whatever, like the big famous castles, whatever. Like I was looking at a little bit more modest, still
a
quite
modest
cool.
castle,
a modest castle,
but very humble.
Yeah, no, but it was basically like what we were looking at was basically like a quite old one, and that would have had to have done, like, you would have had to do a lot of work on it. There was basically an entire wing that was done where you could have housed like a bunch of people if you wanted to, like a couple of families. But the rest was basically a lot of renovation work. So I would have renovated that. That was kind of like the whole thing, like, because I enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, basically, I mean, because a lot of people keep asking me what happened with that, I got the okay from the realtor, I got the okay from the seller. And the day of the signing, the seller decided not to sell because he wanted to keep it. So
that's so brutal.
That was quite something. Yeah. No. So I settled on normal house. So that's been that. Also have been dealing with tax investigations, which has been fun. I do pay all of it, so it's not like I'm in danger, but it's just a headache. So that's been kind of my life, like dealing with a bunch of accountants, dealing with a bunch of what's it called? The notary. Yeah. Like all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, this kind of touches on like a question we usually ask at the end, but I'm like quite curious what your end game is. Like, you know, are you at a stage where you just stop trading completely, or is there like a figure and you have in your mind, or like, where do you see this going from here in terms of the trading?
No, I mean, it's fun, I think. Like, I don't think I'm ever gonna stop necessarily trading entirely. If anything, you're gonna see me disappear from Twitter. I think that's something that I could see myself just be fed up with one day. The trading part, I mean, it's just fun. It's not like I'm like, oh, I need to make it this far or that far. Because at the end of the day, like, if you have those kind of goals, you're always going to find one that's higher, you know? Like, if you're like, oh, I just want to get to this and that number. Once you're at that number, you want to have 10 times that. And then once you at the next number, you want to have 10 times that. For me, it doesn't really exist. At some point, like, what the fuck are you going to do with that money? You know, like I at some point, for me personally, and this is why I think I'm never going to be like this person that is just kind of like larger than life, because I couldn't care less about it. Like, for me, I do my thing. I can live my life, and I'm quite good on the money front. Play Elden Ring, and I really don't need to make it into like exclusive clubs of whatever, like the richest people on earth, not even close. I don't really care about that, so that's not my end game. I just want to have like I want to have fun. I want to be challenged, and that's kind of what the market does, you know. Like it's one of the most competitive games in the world, if not the most competitive game in the world.
Jim always says the same.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I always like gaming for that, not necessarily for the game, but just playing other people and being better than them. And that's kind of like the trading mindset I have too. But there's no real end goal. It's just having fun and being good at something that you're good at. And that's kind of what I try to do.
You know, after such a, you've just obviously closed a big year-long trade. As far as like, what's your sort of appetite to get back in the market straight away? Are you sort of quite content in waiting for your parameters to be hit again? Like, it's similar parameters to the previous trade. It's like, if you get like a feeling that we might keep rallying, do you still feel the pressure to sort of try and get back in, even though you've hit your target?
I mean, obviously, like when you have been in the trade for so long and you close it and the market keeps going up, it's not the best. Like, that's never feels good. Just because you're like, oh, I could have made this, like I could have done this, I could have like played this better, basically. But for me, honestly, like, I actually don't really feel like trading in the next, like, I don't know, 3-4 months. Probably I'll stay away for quite a while, just based on the fact that I'm one, this is not necessarily the market that I'm good at. This is where a lot of other people are much better than me, because now it's frothy and it can stay frothy for quite a while. The altcoin market can go crazy. I don't really trade that too much anymore.
Yeah, you hate altcoins, don't
and
you?
I have other things.
You're always saying altcoins are going to zero, don't you?
I mean, yeah, for me, everything is going to go to zero.
Oh, don't say
it makes
that.
it easier to sell. Like I mean, Bitcoin is the only one that I have faith in that it's not going to disappear. I'm not even in the camp that ETH is not going to disappear. I think at some point, like give it 10 years and you're probably not going to see ETH around anymore, or maybe 15. That's kind of like my going thesis. So it's quite easy for me, and this is kind of where my mindset comes from. It's quite easy for me to let go and just be like, okay, whatever. Like if you think something in the market doesn't really have value and you just manage to sell it for more than twice of what you bought it for, I mean, there's no real rush to buy something back that has like that should go to zero in your mind, you know. Like that makes it much easier for me, especially when I trade altcoins. Like I sell them, sometimes they go up 5x 10x afterwards. I'm like, well, there's just a bunch of people that are even more idiotic than I was for buying this shit. And that's kind of makes it easy. So I don't really have much of a rush. I also have like, because we're moving, so I kind of have that going, and then like Christmas, all of that stuff. So I'm just kind of like, it's been good, but it's time for a little bit of not trading. So that's going to be the next 3-4 months for me, more likely than not. Because I mean, it would be January, honestly. Like staying away from trading is quite hard. It's a little bit of an addiction, but with the ETF coming, like buying in January just seems kind of shit. I really don't want to be a buyer into ETF news. I think that's been, especially now if the market keeps going up, that's like more than priced in. I think if anything, you're going to see price move down afterwards. So I mean, I don't want to buy into that if I think the price is going to go lower. I don't want to short, because for me, the shorting game, that's kind of like what I did a lot in the old days, but I've moved away from that. I don't really do it anymore. For me, just having zero exposure is like having zero exposure in a market that I know in and out, and that I've spent the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years just obsessing over, seems quite bearish already. That's as bearish as I'm gonna get.
What's your long-term outlook on the ETF? Because I mean, yeah, the people I trust and kind of my personal opinion as well is similar in terms of short-term to yours. And a few people I've spoken to, you know, who have experience in traditional funds, know how long it takes for funds to actually start offering these new ETFs to their clients. Like it can take like a year. You know, the ETF goes live and then it's only people start buying it a year later. But there is also, from these people I've spoken to, there is a more demand than they've ever seen for these ETFs. I'm curious, do you see this kind of launching in a year's time, actual buying pressure? Or do you think it's more of like a speculative event and it won't actually manifest as something that can push the price up to, you know, what people are actually predicting it might?
I mean, it very much depends on the price action, I think. Like if you get it and we kind of fizzle out, and this is why I think, like, if you're actually a bull, like this massive rally going into the ETF isn't really helping you much, because it would have been much better if it comes afterwards, because then you have this whole, okay, the ETF came around, now you have these flows and the price is going up. Like that's a much better narrative than you get an ETF and then price goes down. Yeah. Like, okay, this was all just based on speculation. But I think in general, like whenever crypto prices go up, people just kind of lose their minds. So if you get price, like if price moves up, if the entire market, like the global market kind of does well, like if the S&P does well, all of that kind of stuff, and crypto does well, I could see that be quite a big driver in general of just like driving price higher. So longer term, I think the ETF is going to be a good thing. Just short term, I think we're doing a lot of pricing in right now. Yeah. Midterm, I don't know. It seems kind of like it seems reliant on the market basically midterm, and that I don't know how that's going to turn out. Like if the market crashes, it could take like a couple of years until the ETF actually gets favor with people. If the market is rallying, I think people would want to pile in any way possible, because it's just how crypto works.
It's a shame. I was hoping for an entry, stop profit, stop loss, take profit. I was hoping for a bit more details, but oh well.
Yeah, no, in general, this is something where I think you have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that, like, I mean, this is not my expertise, you know? Like, I see a lot of people kind of just speculating on a bunch of stuff that they have no idea about. I'm very aware that, like, in the world of traditional finance, I just have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. And then, like, speculating on this is, like, I can give my opinion, but at the end of the day, like, I think there's much better people to listen to on that front. So I try to just, I trade the narrative, basically. I was trading the narrative that, I mean, it made sense, you know, that price goes up if you have the ETF narrative going. Now that that's largely played out, I'm just as dumb as everyone else. And then, yeah.
Have you ever dabbled with like traditional finance, like commodities or Forex or anything like that? Maybe back in your early trading days?
Oh yeah, I was actually, like, when I started out, I was very interested in the whole trading thing, and then I was like, okay, how do I learn this? And I looked at all the available stuff out there, basically, and it was all shit. Like, the crypto stuff was completely horrendous. You could tell that people didn't actually know what the fuck they were talking about. This was like 2016, 2017. Like, people were just making shit up, and you could tell, you know, like, nothing made logical sense. And so I was like, okay, if the crypto stuff doesn't make sense, let me see if I can look on the Forex side of things, if people actually make more sense. So I dabbled in it, but then I realized, like, that's all like mostly garbage too. I mean, the Forex side of things has been scammy, to say it nicely. I think, like, people are just making money off of paid subscriptions and paid deals and ref links on that front. I think you have to be very, very sharp to make money on Forex, and I think teaching that to people and then expecting like 10,000 people that take your course to all make money, I think that's a little bit of a joke. Expecting 10 people out of the 10,000 to make money is probably rich even. So I dabbled in that, and then I was like, okay, there's the crypto market's so much easier, and I'm just going to have to learn by doing, because everything that I found didn't make much sense to me. I was always kind of like trying to find logic in whatever people were posting. They were like, okay, this is a triangle, so price has to go up. I was like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Like, how does that make any sense? Like, and then if you ask the question, it was like, nah, this is just a triangle. This plays out this and that way. But it wasn't like, and you can make sense of these patterns, you know, like if you actually think about it, how this works, like you have a bunch of buying into a resistance, like basically everyone that is willing to sell at a price level is getting filled, and at some point, if you hit it too often, like there's just not going to be people left to sell into that level, and then price goes up, right? But people are just like, okay, just draw this fucking triangle and then the market has to go up. But that's not how it works, and it didn't make any sense to me. So I just ignored all of that and just kind of tried to make it by myself, and that worked out. And I think everyone, at the end of the day, and this is something that Jim said earlier, like you have to kind of figure out how your brain works and what you're good at and what you're bad at. So I think in general, it's just kind of like you figuring out yourself what works for you and what doesn't, and what makes sense to you and what doesn't, is 10 times better than taking any course, taking any kind of like mentor in the game that teaches you whatever, because everyone just kind of works differently on the trading side of things. I think there's not one size fit all, like one way to trade. It just doesn't work. You just kind of have to figure out how you work and then try to take advantage of that. And you're not going to find that in listening to someone else, not necessarily. Like you can get hints, but you cannot just copy someone else, in my opinion.
I think Jim's quite distracted right now. I think he's looking at the chart. That's why. Are you looking at Bitcoin right now?
No, it's fine.
It's basically it's currently ripping. That was I was keeping an eye on that as well. So I think, because we're coming up on the hour, Jim, do you think we should still, even though we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, do you want to maybe give off the finale question?
Oh, I thought we already done that question earlier.
I guess we could maybe touch on more of like what success maybe looks like for you, Don, because we kind of looked at like I guess we kind of did touch on that, didn't we already?
Yeah, I mean, success in general, I think, is being able to do whatever the fuck you want to do. And some people have very high goals and they want to be the richest person on the planet. Some people just have very modest goals, and I think that's all fine. So for me, it's just basically I want to be able to do what I want to do, and not necessarily be held back by like any constraints. And I mean, that's basically it. And I think I'm quite like, I'm not really interested in a luxury life. I don't even own any watches, any of that kind of front. So it's quite easy to get to my goals, and I don't really have any like financial goals above that. If anything, like the more money I make, the more I'm going to donate at the end of the day. That's something I'll enjoy doing, like just giving money away. Not to people that DM me on Twitter, but just in general, like I find it.
Damn it!
I was just about to.
I'll unsend that message.
No, but like just charities that I like, or like projects that I like. That's something that I enjoy doing.
Well, projects that you like, I'm right here, man. If you want to send over some funds.
No. Like I've actually had some crypto projects that try to do charity work, but I inherently don't trust anything crypto.
I mean, it's on-chain gem I'm underwater on if you want to relieve me.
Yeah, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
Straight.
Jim, we've never actually asked you, I don't think. I'm actually quite curious what your idea of success is. Like what you're aiming towards.
Success for me is being able to pursue the things I'm passionate about every day. And it not be...
Golf, baths.
You know, there's been instances in my life where the need to earn money has sort of ruined the enjoyment of the pursuit, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, I get it.
Like my passion has always been in deep learning of difficult, complex sort of jobs and tasks. And success for me is being able to pursue those whilst earning enough to be able to sustain them comfortably, you know, without them being, you know, without it being a necessity, basically. So,
yeah, I think you like in general, like there's something that would be quite cool if we as humanity get to a point where you don't have to worry too much about that whole like survival thing, and you can just do whatever the fuck you're passionate about. Would be quite cool. God. But yeah,
that's a big. That honestly, I could talk about that for the next fucking 3 hours. To be honest, because I think that's what holds us back is that tribalistic sort of core principle of like survival. I don't think any of us necessarily have it anymore. We almost create it in order to feel it.
Well, that was always my worry. If like you know, if I feel like I'd enjoy if I retired now, I think I'd enjoy it for a year, and then I'd get like I remember when I finished my degree, I had 1 week of not doing anything, and I got like anxiety. Like I was like, I have to be doing something with my time. Like I need something that's occupying. Like that's why I got into it working in the crypto industry, because it's quite literally 24/7. As much as my girlfriend hates that, I've not had a full weekend in a long time. But yeah, that's like one thing. Like for me, like I've always struggled to see what I could fill that void with.
So like for me, I really had to sort of wean myself out of it and sort of heal that part of myself where I was holding on to like residual anxiety that I've like had when I was struggling in life, that I was still sort of had on a day-to-day basis, even when I didn't have those struggles anymore, because it becomes like routine, you know, even though it's not real anymore. So that was a big thing. Anyway, we could maybe we have a round two in a few weeks.
Let's do another 3 hours. Let's go. Yeah, no, I think. Oh, sorry, go on, Dom.
No, I go philosophical next time. Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, we're right at the hour, so I think we can wrap it up there. But thanks so much, Don, for coming on. It was like really, really interesting, and hopefully people get a bit more insights into your journey from this. I think, you know, one of the reasons we want to do this podcast is because like a lot of people on Twitter, you kind of see them, they have that status where you can't really be like them. So it's kind of nice to break it down and like understand your psychology a bit more. So yeah, thank you for coming on. And Jim, as always, thank you for co-hosting.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
That was fun.
Cheers, Don. That's really good.
All right. And thanks everyone for watching.